And my first question to you is, was piano your very first instrument?
Yes, it was. Although I wanted to play trombone, you know, but in elementary school, you know, they said my arms were not long enough for that instrument. And I also wanted to play sousaphone. But we had piano in the home. My godmother, who lived around the corner, I grew up in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, and my godmother's name was Teresa Adele Tucker, and she was a friend of my mother and father, so my mother and father sent me to her home to take piano lessons. So studying, like, you know, Western classical stuff, you know, with a young person, and you know, we played in recitals, you know, every year did a recital. Had to memorize stuff. So I read some, but I wound up playing, memorizing stuff and playing by ear more so than, you know, reading, outright reading.
Yeah, yeah.
Fluently reading.
Right. So now, when was your very first professional gig?
In the 50s, I was working with a guy named Nate Murray. Nate Murray plays the bass. He's still with us. And in his band was Earl Grubbs, Coltrane's nephew, Carl Grubbs. Because Earl and Carl Grubbs, his father, Earl Grubbs Sr., was the brother of Naima Grubbs, who became John Coltrane's first wife. So we played, they were in the band. Nate Murray was on bass. Jimmy Cassine Turner was on drums, was Nate's cousin. And, you know, played with a lot of different people. Got in Ron Everett, played trumpet. Ron was he was a doo-wop singer. He sang with a group called the Castells.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ron also was a playwright and, you know, songwriter. We've written songs together. And, you know.
Now, you grew up here in the Philadelphia area?
Philadelphia area, a place called Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Which is right near Villanova University. And so it was a black community. Folk from the Great Migration came up pretty much from Virginia, North Carolina area to Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
Migration. Like with Chicago, you know, people came from Mississippi, New Orleans, and, you know, some Georgia, like Elijah Muhammad, different people.
Right.
Sun Ra came from Alabama.
Right.
Well, by way of Alabama, by way of Chicago, and by way of Chicago, and by way of Philadelphia, from Saturn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me ask you. Now, you know, when you think of, when we talk about Sun Ra, we think of you know, space is the place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of the space and the place, what was the music scene like in Philadelphia when you were a teenager growing up here?
Well, there was a lot of jam sessions at people's homes and in bars and stuff. You know, like people like John Glenn. John Glenn was one of Coltrane's tight buddies. He played tenor sax, and according to what, you know, legend has it that John Glenn influenced Train into explore like a multiphonics, playing two or three more notes at the same time on saxophone. And John was very good friends, and we had a lot of great people around. Like we had C Sharp, Clarence Sharp,
Right.
Arnold Jordan, saxophone player. In fact, Arnold played on the last date that Train did in Philly. You know, before Train made transition. Sonny Fortune, and Sonny's old heads was like Kenny Rogers and Jimmy Vass, Donnie Moore, bass player. And last time I seen Donnie play back in the 60s, he was with Monk, traveling with Monk, and I was blessed to do some gigs, hired Sonny on some gigs. We did a couple of gigs about maybe 10 years ago in Philly, which was a blessing. But a lot of people like Rashid Ali, we all played together. Sonny Johnson, who Rashid had him hired by Train. He was in Train's band as well. But so a whole lot of stuff going on here.
And I want you to talk about how that came about.
Well, the album is called Teddy Live Coast to Coast, Teddy Pendergrass album. It was done from 2 concerts, one in the Greek Theater in LA, Los Angeles, and the Super Theater, which is now called the Merriam Theater in Philadelphia. And with such, performances from both of those. And then it was live performance, live studio cuts and interviews by Mimi Brown, who's a radio personality, used to be on WGAS in Philadelphia. And so we were given Platinum and Gold. The band was Teddy's band and background singers.
Yeah.
All blessed to be on those plaques, that
right.
Platinum was gold first and then platinum.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Gold, I think it's 500,000 is gold.
Exactly.
And then a
million copies.
As far as albums go.
Absolutely.
Like it's different breakdown with like
singles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe 12 inches, maybe.
Yeah.
Doing that there. But I was blessed to work with Teddy. I worked with Teddy from the time he left Harold Melvin, 1975, up until his automobile injury in 82.
Yeah.
We did like a lot of places in New York, Radio City.
Yeah.
We did Carnegie Hall. We did Nassau Coliseum, Jones Beach. Well, almost Jones Beach. We was on the show with Ashford and Simpson.
Right.
At Jones Beach. They went on. There was a downpour.
We
couldn't go on.
That's right.
But we worked, Avery Fisher Center, Teddy,
So now, Teddy Pendergrass started out as a drummer
Right.
with Harold Melvin.
Right.
And since you knew him, when did he make that transition to become this iconic, solo, phenomenal vocalist?
Well, I have Teddy's book called Truly Blessed. It's in there. I don't recall exactly when it happened, because before I got with him. But he was with Harold when I got with him, Well, I met him. I met him in the Brunos because, I'm a dancer also. I used to go to discos, dances. And they used to hang out, Teddy and Bernie and Larry and Lloyd, and Harold sometimes would hang out in the discos. So I knew them from that, knew who they were, But I was blessed. A guy named Michael Sugar Bear Foreman, his bass player, who he and I worked with Major Harris.
Right.
And Major came out with Love Won't Let Me Wait. And
which was a big hit for him.
right. And then from there on, Sugar Bear got me the gig with Barbara Mason and the Futures. I toured with them, 1975, Lady Love 75. And then I was working with Billy Paul, worked with him out in LA, the Total Experience Lounge, Just Jazz in Philly, Paul's Mall in Boston, Seattle, and then Teddy left Harold. And Sugar Bear told me, Teddy left Harold, and some of the Brunos probably be with him. He needs a band. Would you be interested in participating? So I came, I did the audition. Well, I didn't have to audition.
Yeah.
But then he taught me the music, and so we toured.
So you traveled all around the world with Teddy Pendergrass.
No, we worked, overseas we traveled to Trinidad, and we did like 5 cities in the UK. Manchester, Edinburgh, Brighton Beach, Birmingham, Croydon, London, and a few other places too.
So now you switched from being a jazz pianist, traveling with Teddy Pendergrass, who is more of an R&B artist. And I wanted to ask you, what is your mindset when you go into a gig that, let's say, like a Teddy Pendergrass gig versus a jazz gig? What's your mindset in terms of how you're going to perform in each of those type venues?
Well, see, like in the so-called straight-ahead jazz situation, like Norman Connors and Billy Paul and us used to live together back in the 60s, so we were all straight-ahead, stone, so-called jazz players, you know, and we didn't like deviate. But years later, when I heard Norman and Billy Paul come out with these hit records, I said, let me examine what this is. And so I started checking out their records, and then I studied the Mighty Love album, the Spinners, and Blue Magic's first album, and self-taught myself some of this so-called sound of Philadelphia music, and went down Sigma Sound, and it was I met Larry Washington, the percussionist with MFSB, the Mother Father System, brother band, who was the horns and strings and rhythm section for all those big hits out of Philly during the golden age of the sound of Philadelphia. And so Larry, he said, what do you do? I said, I play piano. He said, play me something. So he took me in Sigma Sound to Studio B. I did a medley I made up. He said, I got a cousin named Major Harris. They're going to make a big star of it with Ella and he's a band.
Yeah.
So he hooked me up with the audition, and that's just history from that.
Yeah. You know, one of the amazing things about Philadelphia is that it was a huge jazz scene. Coltrane, the Heath Brothers, Reggie Workman is from here. You know, all these great jazz musicians, and there was this big jazz scene here. And then later, it was like this Philadelphia sound. You know,
see, Train and them, they walked the bar, they played rhythm and blues, pop music, all
well, I was gonna get to that. I was gonna get to that.
All them people.
I know. I was gonna get to that.
Jimmy
But
Heath.
Exactly.
Jimmy and them, they played at the Uptown Theater.
Yeah.
The rock and roll shows, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing.
Well, I gotta mention Sam Reed. See, Sam Reed.
Right.
Sam Reed was the band leader at the Uptown Theater, and he and Jimmy and Tootie Heath grew up together. Well, him and Tootie and Ted Curson, they all grew up together.
Right.
They was contemporaries. They had a band called the Bebop Trio, just them three, right?
Right.
And Sam's first teacher was Jimmy Heath, you know. So, and then Percy was the old head of the Heath family, so Sam grew up under them. And then so like Sam also grew up with like Bobby Timmons, Garrison, all them people.
Right, right.
And Sam was telling us that he played like this here and that there and stuff.
Right.
Before it was even recorded, like with Garrison.
Exactly.
With Timmons, with Bobby. You know?
Yeah.
But see, like in South Philly, it was like an alto sax and trumpet team, which was Ted Curson and Sam Reed. Sam was playing alto then. And North Philly was Kenny Rogers and Lee Morgan. So he was all connected. Then Lex Humphreys, the drummer, but the whole Lucy Barnes, all them people was, played together, jam sessions, and came up together.
Yeah, I was later on. I'm going to be talking with Joe Chambers, and you referenced something earlier that I want you to touch on a little bit, and that's the whole concept of walking the bar. And a lot of people around the country, they're not familiar with that term, and I want you to expound a little bit on what the concept of walking the bar is all about.
Well, there was a musician named Lynn Hope. Now, Lynn Hope was from Ohio.
Yeah.
And he moved to Philadelphia, and he wore a turban. He's Muslim. He was the first, according to what I've heard, he was the first African-American, North American black to make the Hajj in Mecca back in the 40s.
Right.
So he would walk the bar. He had a suit on, play tenor. He played at the Showboat, have lines around the corner. People couldn't wait to see him walking the bar.
Yeah.
On top of the bar in the tap room, in the bar.
Exactly.
Playing, the band be playing, they honking, they rocking the house and all that. And Train did the same type of stuff.
Yeah,
That was like if you wanted to work, I mean, you wanted to get paid. I mean, that was
Yeah, if you wanted to eat, you walked the bar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It wasn't no sellout. It was just.
It was what you did.
You know.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. I mean, to me it's akin to like musicians who just want to cut their teeth. They may go down to the subway station and play.
That's right.
Or just play in one of the parks.
Yeah, like Sonny Rollins played on the bridge.
On the bridge and stuff like that, So the concept is pretty similar, but walking the bar is something that's very Philadelphia.
Right, I would say. Mm-hmm.
So now after you left Teddy Pendergrass,
Well, see, what happened after he had his automobile injury.
yeah,
We formed a band called Ouch.
right,
So the band was like guitar player, played with Teddy, Robert Wildwiller Grand, he's from Baltimore. Norman Smith, bass player from Philly. Norman, he's joined the Ancestors, he's deceased.
yeah,
And guy named Lonnie Berry, he sang and he played drums from Philly. And Lawrence Newton, also known as Wheeze, he's the lead singer of a group called Urban Gorilla Orchestra. He does a lot of stuff. He's done those Tom Joy the Cruises and the Soul Train.
right,
He's a singing, great singer. We had a band, and the band we were able to do opening acts. We did one for Ashman and Simpson at the Robin Hotel in Philly, and we did one with Chester Cabaret for Phyllis Hyman. And we played. We did audition. We did an interview on Gary Bird's show in New York,
right,
radio
right,
program, and through our manager Nava Concepcion, she knew a lot of people. She used to work for John Houston, Whitney's father. Her and Mtume used to work in Miles Cities in Newark.
right, right,
And so she was the manager of our group, and she hired Glenda Gracier and Sidney Francis to be our business affairs management. And through that collective, we were able to do a lot of things with a band. We recorded like 4 tunes, original tunes, R&B, funk, back in the 80s, but the material never came out. However, we have the master tapes, and we're about to do some things with them. Far as it's archival, it's like say stuff right here. This is like 1950s mid-century collectibles.
yeah, yeah,
Like the color combination, pink and black.
yeah.
That was the whimsical color combination.
Right, and I'm gonna get a nice photo of all of that.
This is like if you see a piece of clothing, something like this. This is it's called dead stock. It was never worn and never
Right,
used before. So this is some of this kind of stuff. So
exactly. But Alfie, I'm gonna stop you right there, brother.
Yes, sir.
We got a lot to talk about, but I'm gonna stop you right there because we're gonna go to part 2.
okay.
And I just want to stop you right there, Alfie. It was so good for you inviting me into your home so we can have this conversation.
My pleasure.
And we're gonna go to part 2.
Okay.